And welcome everybody to the Sleeperwaiver show. It is your host, Dirty Jobs 21. I'm sitting here with my friend Roto Street Wolf at the Roto Street Wolf. How are we doing this evening? Thank you for joining us tonight.
Hey man, I'm doing great. So much. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm doing fantastic. You know, Tuesdays are always that crazy waiver wire rush. So I'm happy to work through that with you. Chat some ball. Always a good time, man.
Heck yeah. We're getting towards we were just talking about we're getting towards that end of the season rush, where you're either in it, you're going for it, and it might be time to make a few changes on your team. But the problem is that it gets pretty dang limited right now. And there's not a whole lot of people left, right. Unfortunately. We're sitting in a vast way. I mean, the guys I've got pulled up on my list right now, for instance, it's just scary. I'm getting ready to talk about J.D. McKissick. As somebody I'm going to add on my team to win this week. It's rough, man. That's when 2020 is in full effect.
Absolutely. Yeah. And probably the top running back ad. Exactly what you're saying. It is full in effect. It is not pretty. It's not great. But I mean, J.D. McKissick, 14 targets too this week. Yeah. He's certainly somebody worth discussing. It is what it is. And there always still will be one or two guys from this point on. Like, it looks hideous, but there will be a season changer at some point, whether it's this week or the next. There's always that like stretch run waiver wire hero. So this list doesn't look too appetizing. I don't know if it's going to come from this week, but it's still, you got to play the waiver game. Definitely.
Absolutely. So with that, we're just going to go ahead and kick off with the quarterbacks. Now, the quarterbacks I've got written down here is Tua Tagovailoa and Drew Lock. Do you have any other quarterbacks you're looking at, or what do you think about these guys as waiver ads?
Yeah, those are definitely my top two. We just saw Locke eviscerate the Falcons, 313 yards, 2 scores, another on the ground, showing a little bit of mobility, which just even adds more ceiling to his game. Those weapons Judy's been running wide open all year. It's nice to finally see him get those targets he deserves. But in the mix with that, Noah Fant so athletic down the seams, and Tim Patrick reliable. Like, he's got the weapons, and his schedule is just a cakewalk these next few weeks. So Drew Lock's kind of my number one, but Tua, very intriguing, very consistent with that 20 for 28, 248, 2 scores. And just like Lock, also showing a little bit of mobility. We knew he was mobile in the pocket, but he was really running for it this last week. So I like both those guys, definitely my top 2 ads. And really, it's pretty barren after that. I mean, Jake Luton looked okay. He had a deep rope to Chark. So, I mean, maybe, just maybe, if you're desperate, they're going to have to chuck because the Jaguars just got awful. So ultimately, those are the only 3 quarterbacks I had written down, with Locke and Tua definitely towards the top of my list.
Absolutely. Yeah. So those guys also, I was thinking about that Luton guy too as well. And I'm like, I just can't even, because I can't bring it to myself to do that to the fantasy community. He did have that great pass. It was a great start out. But man, I like I was saying on Sunday, I like my lineups Luton free if I can help it.
Absolutely. Unless you own Chark, man. Like, those 12 targets are real. But that's really the takeaway with him. It's not so much I want to play him. I guess desperate 2 QB leagues, you could look at it. Intriguing too with Tua, his schedule. Both him and Locke have easy ones, but he gets the Chargers, the 3rd easiest, Denver, the 10th easiest, the Jets, 9th, and then Cincy right after. So, like, heading right into the playoffs, if you're desperate, Big Ben went on the COVID list today. Like, I'm a Big Ben owner in a couple leagues. Like, you got to find somebody on here. So I would go, who do you prefer out of Locke and Tua? Those are probably my top 2. I think I'm going Drew Lock, but what are your thoughts on that?
I feel like I'm going Drew Lock too, for fantasy purposes for sure. But now what I like about Tua is, like, this guy somehow has landed into the perfect new quarterback situation, right? Mm-hmm. Where you have an awesome defense. I mean, where did this defense come from is one thing. Like, they've been there the whole time. I mean, all these guys should be doing this kind of a level of football, but now they're actually playing this level of football. They're actually looking pretty dang good. So this guy doesn't have to get up there. He just gets up there and he calls the plays, right? He doesn't have to get up there and make all kinds of decisions or anything like that. He gets just go be a rookie and look around and, let the game kind of play at a pace that he's comfortable with and everything. And I mean, so for Tua, I really like his outlook because he's going to be able to just start. Dynasty, get this guy as much as you can because he's not going to be any cheaper than he is right now, because I don't think he's going to be anything off the charts the next few weeks or anything like that. But boy, I feel like next season, once this guy's getting real comfy in there, he's going to be tough to beat. But for
Absolutely.
this season, I'm going to say Drew Lock for sure. I just like the Broncos schedule as well. But man, you can't argue with Tua's, but I just don't see him being necessary in those games if that defense keeps playing lights out. Like he's just not going to be needed.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that is a great point too, especially dynasty wise, like the composure he's already showing to lead those game winning drives and make those heads up plays. It definitely long term. He's kind of already, it's only been 2 starts, so I don't want to overreact, but he's showing that kind of it factor. And I'm very intrigued next week with Herbert and him, both of those guys going, showing so well as a rookie. That's going to be a great battle to see which one of them comes on top versus the Chargers next week.
Yeah, see, and I feel like this is going to be a game like I don't think that defense is going to be able to shut Herbert down the way they've been shutting everybody else down. And so I feel like we are going to see the Tua that has to make decisions and really huck the ball a little bit just to keep up in the game. So yeah, I'm with you. I think this ought to be a good shootout. Maybe this week I might have just sold myself on Tua for this week. Over Drew Lock, although man, I do like Drew Lock a lot too, but I'm also a Broncos fan. I got to be careful there.
Right.
For sure.
Absolutely.
So for my running backs this week, I've got Duke Johnson, JD McKissick. We got Jordan Wilkins, Kalen Ballage. Oh, man, that makes me cry a little bit. I don't know if you saw the tweet right there saying Kalen Ballage again, but here we are, 2020.
Right.
And here it is.
Absolutely. And same list that I have. I have McKissick at the top just because he seems to be the most steady at this point. I mean, as much as I want it to be the Gibson show and think it should be the Gibson show, why do you convert a wide receiver to running back just to take him off on passing situations? I don't know. Logic does not add up here. That's typical of the Washington franchise. But 83% of the snaps for McKissick in there with Antonio Gibson's in there, who has only 1 third down touch all year. Just kind of blows my mind again why a wide receiver would be so underutilized on those situations. And it's not even like they're asking McKissick to pass block that often. He only pass blocked 5 times this last week, but the targets are there. 7.6 targets over the last 4 weeks. He's the RB20 in PPR leagues and still out there in 80% of leagues right now. That role just seems like it's going to be here to stay. So I like him a lot. You mentioned Duke Johnson. In terms of a 1-week plug-in, like this could be Gio Bernard just all over again style guy. We've never really seen him, Duke Johnson, get a bell cow role, but 16 carries, career high last week with nobody else behind him. Buddy Howell and Cullen Gillisapia, but I don't even know how to say the dude's name. Whoever that is, like I'm not worried about Duke Johnson coming off the field this week, assuming he is the starter. Gets the Cleveland revenge narrative too. So it depends really what you're looking for, right? If you need the 1-week stream, just filling in a gap and really don't need much more, Duke's probably going to be the better player just this week. I do think McKissick long-term projects better. What about this Wilkins? I mean, what a nightmare for Jonathan Taylor. I don't know what to do. I don't know if I want to go after him. I mean, he has outsnapped him 62-47. Wilkins versus Taylor outtouched him 34-21. But it's hideous, man. Like, do I really want to go into this ugly quagmire of a black backfield? Like, or do we just avoid it altogether? I don't know. How are you approaching these Colts guys?
I wish Marlon Mack was back. I can tell you that right now, because at least I didn't figure Jonathan Taylor. Now, I did have tempered expectations going into the season for him, but I always do with rookies. I mean, I did with CEH too. When people started grabbing those guys in the first and second round, I'm like, you're crazy. These are rookies. Yeah. We haven't even got to see them in preseason and how they translate to the NFL. I mean, really not one good running back minus Ezekiel Elliott's like literally the only guy I can think of that came out the gate, did everything he needed to do, started pounding, and is a great football player, and he stays on the field, or else Saquon Barkley would be in that category too. But every other running back out there, they take a little while to develop. Derrick Henry took like 3 years before he started being this lights-out football player we all knew he was going to be. I think Jonathan Taylor is going to be in that same boat. I think CEH is in that same boat. But fast forward to now, or rewind to now, and we got Jordan Wilkins and Duke Johnson. Duke Johnson I'm with you. He is intriguing as far as seeing him in the bell cow role finally. I mean, but I feel like we've had this opportunity with this guy plenty of times, and he just doesn't ever show up or show out. That's why I would lean a little bit more towards JD McKissick. The target share and what this guy is doing with that target volume is just too much to ignore, but it's close, and it's not close in the right way, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, man, when you start looking at who you got to drop for these guys too, you're like, I'm in good conscience doing this right now because I need the spot, you know?
Exactly. Exactly.
I do like the fact that we both avoided Kalen Ballage that whole time because I feel like with him, I feel like I know what I'm getting. I mean, he had the opportunity in a pretty decent offensive line, and he just didn't do too much with it. He looks a little bit better this year. He looks like he's got a little bit more spring in his step, and he's a little bit faster. Are you leaning on him at all in any of your leagues?
Hopefully not. It depends how the waiver wires go. Never a good position if you have to be. But he did, 16 and a half fantasy points in PPR leagues this week, was the number 4 running back. Like, who would have? JD McKissick was number 3, and Kalen Ballage was number 4 in running back scoring after, of course, McCaffrey and Cooks blow-ups. But what a week. Like, if those are your number 3 and 4 guys, holy crap. Like, I mean, my God. But 15 carries, 3 targets. Like, it will come down to, is Justin Jackson healthy? Is he going to be in there too? This backfield has been, who's it going to be this week? Is it Josh Kelly? Is it Justin Jackson? I mean, it's just a constant rotation until Eckler's back. It's tricky to trust, but then also they are scoring so many points on a weekly basis, just as a whole offense, that the touchdowns are going to be there for whoever it is getting the volume, getting the valuable touches. And it looks like Kalen Ballage is the next man up, and maybe he's just the next in a long list of gets away from Adam Gase and actually does something in his career. We've seen it happen with Robbie Anderson this year. We've seen it happen. Everybody that gets away from Adam Gase ends up blowing up. So maybe Ballage is better than we all expected. He's worth a stab just because of how good the offense is until Eckler comes back. If he's going to be the guy for a handful of weeks, it's more a bet on the Chargers offense than it is Ballage, but volume is volume, and volume in a good offense is even better. So it looks like he's in line for it. I guess the last guy, the only other name I'm seeing out there a lot, and I cut him everywhere I had him, I don't know if I'll regret it, is Cam Akers. Like another one of those, as you mentioned, rookies take a long time to develop. Last year, Miles Sanders took the first half of the season before he really became anything. Is there any type of like post-bye week bounce back for Cam Akers like we've seen with a lot of rookies? I don't think so, but he's just another name to toss out there, I guess.
Right. As much as I want him to, I don't think it's going to happen. I'd really like to see Cam Akers do something. I mean, he seems like, to me, he had the best opportunity, the most talent. And I mean, like, beating Malcolm Brown to me didn't seem like it was a very difficult thing to achieve. Right. But here we are again. I mean, Brown's really looked actually really decent this year.
Yeah.
And Akers just isn't catching up. He's not seeing it. But I'm with you there. I need to tell you my Adam Gase theory, because I was thinking about this today while I was driving around. I was like, I don't believe tanking happens in the NFL. I don't think you can actually get an NFL player who has like contract incentives and things like that to go out there and like go want to lose a football game, right? So what do you do when you have that instance? You hire Adam Gase. And then Adam Gase gets out there, and it doesn't matter how good or bad your players are, he will get you that number 1 draft pick.
Yeah.
Right? And so with that, Kalen Ballage might be worth the ad. Like you said, complete volume. That's the only way to play fantasy football. You want volume, you want opportunity. Right. Typically, those things turn to points for you. They're not going to be points like you would get if Austin Eckler was out there, which, by the way, Austin Eckler, if your ankle's feeling it all better, come on, buddy. He's sitting on a lot of my IRs right now.
Painful, man. And he's going to be so good once he comes back, like within this offense. Well, let's hope at least he comes back, because they're starting to lose like any real incentive to rush him back or play him. So fingers crossed we do see him again, because he's going to be he's already such a dynamite player. But now that Herbert's leading this offensive outburst each week in and week out, I just foam at the mouth thinking about how good Eckler could be in this scheme. I just hope we see it, because there's very little reason to rush him unless he's fully 100% at this point.
Well, and can you imagine the Keenan Allen numbers that are going to happen if Austin Eckler comes out there and is as effective as he can be, where you have to really focus your game on him too. Whew, that could be real good stuff right there coming out of Los Angeles. I keep wanting to call them San Diego still.
Right. They always will be. Seriously.
They always will be San Diego.
Yeah.
Wide receivers, I got Curtis Samuel. We got KJ Hamler. We got Danny Amendola. I really didn't see anybody else that jumped out at me, where I was like, yeah, I really want this guy on my team. What do you think about those guys? And did you have anybody else you had in mind or sitting out there that you were thinking of?
Yeah, I Curtis Samuel, by far my favorite just wide receiver, and I think number one in general on the waiver wire this week. If I have my number one priority, he's the one that I think is willing to spend it on. 38 catches on 43 targets, so efficient this year. I think it's something where he has the 19th most receptions in the league, but on the 57th most targets. It's insane just how efficient he's been, and so much of that has been third downs. I just kind of observed one game. I was like, it's Curtis Samuel, the only third down guy. They seem to pepper him every time. And then sure enough, I looked at the stats, 20 targets on third down, caught 19 of them, and 14 of them have been converted for first downs. Compared to Robbie Anderson and DJ Moore, they're combined for 20 third down receptions. So just one more combined for those two compared to Curtis Samuel and 15 first downs. So only one more first down. So this guy is their third down horse, and it just seems like he's expanding more and more his weekly role. And to see him have his best day of the season, with Christian McCaffrey back in the lineup, that was the big worry is is Samuel just going to become an afterthought? He ended up being more involved than he has been all year with Christian McCaffrey still having 30 points. So I loved him. I loved what I saw. If he's still out there, you have to go hammer this because it's been 14 or more points in 3 straight weeks. He's what I think everybody hoped and wanted DJ Moore to be, and just doesn't seem like it's going to be. So I'm with you there. That's my number one pick. In terms of other guys to maybe chuck out there, Jalen Reagor didn't play this week, but he's only 24% owned, and I'm a big fan of his. Caught a touchdown in his first game back. Really athletic, freakish skill set. Dangerous after the catch, dangerous at the point of attack. Everything about Jalen Reagor I love. He could be a do-it-all guy in an offense that really needs, outside of Fulgham, there hasn't been much consistent. So I like him to step into a very soft rest of season schedule. I think he could go pretty bananas. If one of these, if you're looking for a season changer, he might potentially be that. And then I have to recommend, he wasn't on my list last night when I did my show. If anybody's interested, feel free to check that out. But Jacoby Myers on Monday Night Football. I mean,
right?
Ridiculous. Ridiculous.
We have to talk about that guy because he has been getting the huge focus and the huge attention and everything like that with Cam Newton. So he's another good guy right there. And Jalen Reagor, the thing I really like about Reagor is the development of Fulgham, right? Yeah. You have Fulgham being able to take down that middle part and everything. And now Reagor's going to be able to just off to the races. Mm-hmm. We're going to see a lot of big bombs. Carson Wentz loves throwing it down the field like that. So yeah. I think that's a really good one too. He probably just skipped my list because, of course, bye weeks last week.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Wasn't out there, so it was easy to kind of forget him, and that's why I wanted to make sure to bring him up because he was out there in some leagues last night. I kind of tried to snatch him up wherever I could because some of those leagues will have, if the game hasn't played yet, you can pick guys up. So I went around and sprinkled him in. I kind of wish I picked up Myers instead before the game started. 14 targets last night. I mean, 24% of the target share when Edelman's first out. Now 40% and 40% in back-to-back games. He is the only weapon in the air that's anything consistent, and it has been hugely consistent. 169 yards on 12 catches, so very efficient on his 14 targets too, and really was streaking down the field wide open. It could have been a 200-night touchdown day on 13 catches had Cam not just completely overthrown him. As big of a day as you got out of him, nobody should be complaining about 28 PPR points from Jacoby Myers out of nowhere, but it could have been 40 points.
It was there. Yeah.
It was there.
Yeah.
He's got the 6 most targets in the league over the last 3 weeks too. So as we talked earlier, volume is volume is volume. And even though this is a run-centric attack, when they pass, it's him. It's absolutely him. So he might be my number one. I mean, I like Samuel and I like Reagor. I think they might have higher ceilings because Edelman will eventually come back. But who knows if Edelman's going to just come right in and take over for this guy if and whenever that does happen. Myers has just been that good. It's crazy. I think he actually matched last night. His 169 yards was like 5 less than N'Keal Harry had all last season. So, I mean, it's clear he's a guy moving forward. I love Jacoby Myers.
Yeah, Jacoby Myers. Yeah, that was another good one right there because I was watching that game last night. And like you said, 14 targets. And really, so yes, it is a run-centric offense, but who's running the ball now? I mean, it seems like everybody you hand the ball to in a Patriots uniform, their whole entire body explodes on contact. They're on the IR and out for the season. If your name isn't Rex Burkhead, Burkhead, he'll go out there and take his, 10 carries for his 12 yards or whatever in that touchdown. Yep. But that's about the only consistent part coming out of that team. So I feel like Jacoby Myers might be good. Curtis Samuel, the thing about him is I feel like we've been fooled by this before. It seems like once he starts getting attention from us, there's also defensive coordinators that are also paying quite a bit of attention to him. And once you start game planning for Curtis Samuel, he really kind of starts letting you down. He goes out there and gives you those 8 to 10 point games because he's starting to run into double, triple coverage, things like that. So I'm starting to kind of lean more towards I'm trying to grab DJ Moore in a lot of places where I can because I feel like he's going to pick up the surge. I've always felt like he was the better receiver out of the two. But, man, it's hard to argue with that chemistry. And if you're wrong right here, you're wrong and you lost. That's your season. Chalk it up. So it's hard to ignore Curtis Samuel and what he's been doing. I've always liked the guy. I've always thought he was amazing. But, again, I've always thought DJ Moore was this next level guy coming out of college. I thought he was huge. And so to see Curtis Samuel getting the target share, but, I mean, Teddy Bridgewater sees it. And what's going on with Christian McCaffrey? It looks like he has an opportunity to come back this week. It's a rib injury. So knowing McCaffrey, I watched Ed McCaffrey play for 10 years or something like that in a Broncos uniform. I can tell you that's one tough family. I would probably count on seeing him come out there. So that give me an uptick for Curtis Samuel as well. Like I said, you can't ignore it, but I still am. My hunch is telling me DJ Moore is a guy to grab right now for sure.
Absolutely. I mean, DJ Moore is a phenomenal player. I had him ranked as like a third rounder for a reason. It's so weird how these roles have kind of evolved with Robbie Anderson now there, and he's almost become the alpha target hog throughout the whole season. And now Samuel's emerging more as this like little gadget, like third down guy that's just getting the job done. And it's left DJ Moore on the outside looking in that I did not expect to ever see. I'm hoping that turns around because he is so good. And that's what makes it so dangerous is like, yeah, you think they should roll coverage now to Samuel and maybe that will open up more, but then who's covering Anderson and who's covering Christian? And they really do. They've added some nice weaponry to that offense. And the way Joe Brady uses all those weapons is fascinating to watch on a week-to-week basis. I'm hoping that we get something steady. McCaffrey will always be steady. It seems like Anderson will be steady. I wonder how it's going to play out between Samuel and Moore rest of the season. Definitely one of the more intriguing things to ask and answer. I'm trying to remember the other names you brought up. A couple that I had on here were Tim Patrick at 21% owned. Just seems to be all reliable. I know Judy had his big breakout this week and deservedly so. But Patrick, 14, 23, 14. He got hurt, but then 13 this week. So steady. Top 35 all of those 4 weeks. Now you get Vegas, Miami, and NOLA coming up. That's a pretty easy one. And the last 2 names I had were Darnell Mooney. You saw team high 11 targets, and that's volume that's pretty garbage volume. Bathed in targets, but it's like sewage water because it's Nick Foles just god awful. But he's still running deep, wide open almost once a week. He seems to dust some of the better corners in the league. Jalen Ramsey just a couple weeks ago. It's just a matter of can he connect with the quarterback and the quarterback just get him the ball because the talent seems to be there. And Nelson Aguilar, 24% owned. A lot of people cut him after just disappearing in that wind monstrous game. But, he's got a TD in 4 out of his 5 games when, 4 straight when the wind's not 30-mile-per-hour gusts. Denver, Kansas City, Atlanta, the Jets, all easy matchups coming up outside of Kansas City. I think everybody wants it to be Ruggs. I wish it was Ruggs. I benched Samuel for Ruggs last week, which has cost me a week. I know. I've lost some sleep over the last couple nights over that one. Just
and the struggle is real, my friend. It does happen to the best of us, man. I don't feel like that's even a bad call, knowing the history of both and seeing the opportunity on both as well.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly. So that didn't pan out, but and a lot of that is because Aguilar just seems to be the number one wide receiver. Of course, Waller's the bigger target overall, but Aguilar is that guy, at least especially in the red zone. So just a couple other names at wide receiver I find intriguing for sure.
Yeah, that's definitely some good ones. No, the one guy I said was KJ Hamler. So
Mm,
just the exact opposite of Tim Patrick on the other side of the field there. I agree with both. And again, I just try to fade because I'm a Broncos fan. I'm like, I really like what I'm seeing coming out of that team. Gordon would pull his crap out and just get better and get back to normal. That would be nice, because I feel like he was a really good accent to that.
mhm.
And it seems like Philip Lindsay just kind of lost that.
Right.
Boom, him, gave you the reason why you wanted to watch him play football. So I want to see, and Royce Freeman, I thought he was going to be a whole lot better in the NFL as well. And he just doesn't seem to translate as well as I thought he would either. So
Right.
the run game isn't there. You're going to have to pass it a whole bunch. So I feel like Patrick or Hamler, I feel like they're both great ads. Judy is definitely going to be owned in every single facet. So.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, Judy's already owned at this point. But the way Locke's playing, as we said, the quarterbacks, he could sustain at least two of these guys, if not even Hamler too. That deep speed is so intriguing. Could just blow your matchup up at any point to go deep like that. So yeah, it's a definitely an intriguing offense, especially with the defense also not playing quite as well as we become accustomed to out of the Denver Broncos, keeping the games in fairly shootout style scripts. I like it. And that schedule, again, Vegas, Miami, NOLA, like all of those games could get kind of crazy points wise if it flows the right way. So I'm into it for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And the last guy I'd said there was Danny Amendola. And the only reason is because Kenny Golladay taking a while to come back. Danny Amendola seems to still look good. Marvin Jones is getting his once again, but Danny Amendola, he's looking good to me again this year. I've always been an Amendola fan.
Yeah.
I've always been an Amendola truther, and he's always been kind of like that steady Eddie. I'll give you 10 every single week I play football.
Mm-hmm.
Now he's getting you 14. So hey, he's on the radar. But I don't really see too much coming out of him. Who's really lighting it up over there is Hawkinson. Mm-hmm. I called him a top 5 tight end at the beginning of the season. And that's looking like that's going to pan out. I really liked his opportunity, and I thought that team would be a lot more high octane though too. When I was saying all these things, I was like, luckily he's getting a touchdown every single game, or else he'd be just as miserable as the rest of all tight ends not named Travis Kelce.
It is just the biggest trash heap of tight ends. Exactly. And Hawkins is probably the second most consistent, to be honest, outside of Kelce with all those scores. So that ended up being a big call. But I agree with you. The way they were slinging it around last year before Stafford got hurt, I just thought he was going to walk back in and we're going to see that just balls to the wall, gunning down the field. And it has not been that way, unfortunately. So we'll see if they can regain it. What'd you say?
I said, Patricia's like, nope, we're going to run Kerryon Johnson up the middle again for 12 plays.
Right. Adrian Peterson, let's get the corpse in.
I didn't pay this much for a punter not to use him, goddammit.
Exactly. Seriously. Oh, man.
We got Bobby Skins asking a question. He says, trade Hunt and Locke to get Woods and Waller. He'd have Henry, Taylor, Murray. His quarterback would be Burrow versus Pitt.
Hunt and Locke. It would. I like it. Your quarterback would be Burrow. I mean, you already have a good solid quarterback in there. So Locke doesn't really do much in that sense. You're already probably starting Burrow over him. So Hunt, he looked solid, but didn't even really light the world on fire in those 3 starts. Chubb's expected back this week. So you're getting Woods, who has the easiest playoff schedule among wide receivers, and Waller, probably the second highest rated tight end, him and Hawkinson in contention for that behind Kelce. To me, I think that's a no-brainer. And you have good depth, pretty decent depth at running back. I mean, Taylor is kind of screwing you over, but I think I'd pull this trigger unless you already are stacked at receiver and don't need Woods. I like this trade, though, for the most part.
I really like what you're getting, but what you're giving for it in return kind of leaves me a little bit scared with Taylor and Murray being your RB2.
Right, yeah.
Latavius Murray has been looking pretty lights out, and I think he can get you enough volume to where I don't feel like you're going to miss Hunt. I mean, to be fair, I think he can give you that Hunt style volume.
Yep.
So I think I can talk myself into that with Latavius being my RB2, just knowing that what I had was Kareem Hunt in the first place. So yeah, getting Woods and Waller. Like Waller is definitely a guy that's in that top 3 conversation. You know, Kittle would be there too if he'd stop getting hurt for some reason. He just get destroyed this season, but he's out, and so Waller's definitely. I mean, he's the target monster of Oakland or Las Vegas now.
Yeah,
Oakland and San Diego will forever be. Again, I can't grow up hating these teams as much as I did yelling a lot of the things that I yelled without having permanently ingrained in my brain. So yeah, 100% on this too. I like it a lot.
Definitely.
That'll move us over to tight ends, bud, and then we can wrap this up. I got from literally the only tight end that I saw was Austin Hooper, and he was available. I was actually kind of shocked he was available in a lot of leagues. Did you have any other tight ends, or what do you think of this guy?
Yeah, I think Hooper's he's the one I had at the top of my tight end list for sure. Like you said, shocked to see him out there in 60% of leagues right now. He had 10 plus PPR fantasy points in 3 straight games before he had that appendectomy. And, 5 receptions in 3 straight games from a tight end is extremely rare this year. So, and that was also with Odell on the field. So who knows where he's going to slide into this target totem pole. It's clear Baker's very comfortable targeting his tight ends. Harrison Bryant looks, like a monster for a couple of weeks. I think Hooper will step in right above him though, and become that tight end 1 that he had really been blossoming into over those 3 games before getting knocked out. The only other guy I wrote down on my tight end list was Irv Smith, and it's not like I feel great about it, but he did have 2 touchdowns this last weekend against the Lions. Saw 4 targets on a day where Cousins only threw it 20 times. So, I mean, that's a 20% target share. I hate that it's, that low of an actual pool to get those targets from, but he's, pretty well used right now in the red zone. He doesn't come in for every snap. He actually was 3rd in tight end snaps for the team. So that means that, I'm not sprinting out here making sure I get Irv Smith, but in deeper leagues, if you're having tight end woes, Kyle Rudolph just doesn't do anything at this point. So Irv could blossom down the stretch. He's always had the athleticism. That's the only other guy, though. Hooper, by far, the number 1 tight end, and Irv, I guess, if you're desperate. I guess Schultz, too. Like, he's been kind of getting some volume from these new QBs, even though Dalton never looked his way. So maybe Dalton Schultz. I don't know, though. It's such a wasteland at tight end. And if Goddard got dropped after his bust and into, he's out there in right around 45% of leagues, I think that first game back, there's getting his legs under him. I think he could go on a nice little stretch run, but he's not out there in a ton of leagues either.
Yeah, and I can see the Eagles getting into a lot of red zone opportunities with this. Like, they're actually coming out there with a full, healthy complement of weapons for the first time this season. I don't really think that they've been healthy this whole entire year. So, yeah, Goddard for sure would be on that list for me. I didn't actually know I wasn't aware he's available in so many leagues. I'm going to go be looking over because I think I'd want him over any of these guys. Yeah. I think he could be, that Zach Ertz guy that we were all drafting this year. I think he can come out in Dallas Goddard. I feel like he can be that guy rest of the season. But yeah, Austin Hooper, I think he's another, again, Baker Mayfield loves his tight end. He's going to be the starting tight end. He was throwing to Austin Hooper already. Doesn't have that OBJ pressure. He's going to throw to Austin Hooper a lot. I really like that ad as well. We got Kevin over here. He's got Fant and Andrews at tight end in a 12-team league. He's thinking of dealing 1 for Mostert. Which one would you trade?
Fant, Andrews. I mean, I probably would prefer Fant the rest of the season. And that's kind of crazy to even be saying that after the year, Andrews had last year, but it's been the definition of touchdown or bust. And he kind of already was that way, but he was scoring more often than not scoring last year. So now we got just nothing coming in ever. Like, when was the last time he had a good game? Whereas Fant, they just lost Alberto, who it seems like it should be insignificant. Who the hell's Alberto anyways? But he had 5 red zone targets, 5 end zone targets in the games that Locke has played since returning, because they had that college connection going. That could all go to Fant, who already was doing more between the 20s. He seems like a more steady, consistent guy to me. So I like Fant just a little bit more rest of season than I do Andrews.
Same here. I've been talking about this all season, or not all season long, ever since that Kansas City went to Baltimore and kind of whooped Lamar Jackson's ass. I said I feel like they might have broke the Lamar code. And so when you start seeing a team break a code, the last guy who this happened to that I can remember was Jamarcus Russell. Yeah. Right? Jamarcus Russell came out like a hot pepper, and then all of a sudden he just got shut down. He couldn't figure out how to keep up in the NFL. And I'm worried that might be Lamar Jackson point forward. I feel like the Chiefs got that game plan figured out, and it's game over for them. They're done now. Not done, but you know what I mean. They're just not going to be that same team. Whereas Noah Fant, Albert Okwuegbom or Okaway, whatever the guy's name is. Albert O. He was the thing, the college connection. Drew Lock loved throwing that guy touchdowns. If you look at YouTube videos, I mean, that's all he did for 4 years in college is throw to him. Now he doesn't have him, and he was already throwing to Fant because, gosh, Fant is a beast. So, I feel like I'm going to go with Fant, and I feel like Andrews will probably be the guy that might give you that kind of name value to get Mostert anyways. Yeah. Because either a lot of people aren't sitting there saying, oh, well, here we go. I want this guy on my team for sure.
Exactly. And I'm wondering too, why Mostert? I get that he's kind of the guy if he's in, but he hasn't lasted more than a game. So I don't know that I'm sprinting out to trade. I agree that you should trade one of these guys. Why have them both? And I guess at the end of the day, I'd accept Mostert for it. But could you put one of them in a package and upgrade a little bit more? We don't know when Mostert's going to be back. The schedule's mediocre at best rest of the season. I'm not sprinting out to get Raheem Mostert at this point. He did look great. So if we know we're going to get 4 games rest of the season out of him, okay, I'd love to have him. But I don't know how we could even project him for more than 1 to 2 the way he's been getting banged up. So I get the idea of selling either of these guys. I just don't know why Mostert's the one name you're locked in on here.
Right. It's that's another team with exploding running backs. It just doesn't matter who you put in that position. They get hit by another team and they're done. Right. And we're talking about Jeff Wilson again or somebody like that of that nature. Although we're not, because he also got blown up.
Yeah, exactly.
For sure. Well, but I think that's going to wrap us up. Unless you have any other hot waiver ads you can think of that we didn't go over.
I think we covered just about everybody on my list. It's, there was some blow up games like Richie James and Olamide Zaccheaus and Michael Pittman had 7 targets. But to me, those guys are kind of fantasy full gold. I'm not buying into those guys, especially over the other wide receivers we talked about. It's not a week where I'm looking and seeing a guy that I'm sending all my waiver wire budget, blowing my number 1 priority if people still do that instead of the free agency budget. It's just not one of those weeks where there's a surefire lock, other than maybe Jacoby Myers and Curtis Samuel and Jalen Reagor. Those 3 receivers, I think, could end up being real difference makers down the stretch, whereas McKissick and Duke Johnson plug in here and there, but I would feel pretty bad if one of those guys is my starting running back going into a fantasy playoff game,
Absolutely. Yeah, that's not a good situation to be in. I'm hoping that if you're using these people, it's because, you've got CEH on a bye week and that's it. You're going to replace it. But for sure with the receivers, I think the receivers can definitely be some game-changing guys for sure. And I mean, some season enders. You just really see nothing but good expectations coming out of him. Again, I'm a little bit worried about Curtis Samuel just because I've seen this happen with him a few times before. But this year it does seem different, and it is a different quarterback. It is a different setup. It's a different coaching scheme, and this coaching scheme is figuring out a way to win football games. So the way they keep winning football games, maybe they will continue to use Samuel, as he's been obviously the premier. So why don't you let everybody know where they can find you, where they can listen to you, and all that good stuff, bud?
Absolutely. Thanks again for having me on. It's been a blast talking ball with you. You can find me at Roto Street Wolf on Twitter. Our main handle is Roto ST Journal. The site is rotostreetjournal.com. We breed and feed fantasy wolves. My personal podcast is the Fantasy Fullback Dive. We pave your path to 2020 titles. You can find us anywhere you listen. For that, I am streaming live pretty much every day of the week outside of Saturdays. So just catch my Twitter. You can find me there. I post my schedule up there every week if you want to interact, get your questions answered. More than happy to talk ball anytime with whoever's out there and wants to chat fantasy. We got the crunch time here, the big stretch run. So would love to connect with anybody out there that doesn't follow us already. Check us out. I hope we can help you win some titles.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely worth a follow. I was checking you out earlier. I know you got some good content on there, man. And I'll definitely be watching your live content as well. And it's funny because I don't know what it is about the fantasy industry, but we also have live stuff every night, basically.
Yeah.
For Saturday. Like
we're all addicts, man. We can't get enough of it.
I think we all take Saturdays off just so we can set our lineups officially.
Exactly. The one chance to breathe and look at our own lineups for a change. Exactly.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Love it, man.
Well, you guys all know where you can follow us at the Sleeper Wire Show. Definitely get on sleeperwire.com where we have all kinds of new articles just posting up every single day. We got G-Man Jay running up that show. He is doing an amazing job. We've got an amazing crew of writers, amazing articles. Definitely get on there. Get us some questions. We're on every single night. We got the Blitz. We got the Mail Sack. The Mail Sack will be tomorrow night. Thursday night, we got all kinds of special guests coming on, and then Friday night, AMA. So definitely follow Sleeper Wire, and we will keep you coming down with the content. Roto Street Wolf, man, thank you so much for joining us again. That was such a good time. Way fun to talk football with you. I cannot wait. Hopefully we can do this again here sometime soon. And heck yeah, and everybody else, you take care and have a good week. Good luck.
Cheers, man. Thanks again.